Film. This is where we're going to continue our discussion of our top 5 films, to let you know a bit about where we stand film-wise, our tastes, and, well, that's about it. Let's just crack on.
This is Craig.
I'm Scott Morris.
And I'm Jude Avondale. So next up for me, a film that perhaps betrays some of my sentimental side, which is Amélie, which is a fable, a fairy tale even, of loneliness, of longing, and of romance. It's about a child, Amélie Poulain, who was starved of affection as a youngster and detached and separated from society. But she nevertheless managed to maintain a huge capacity for love, affection, and compassion. What she finds it difficult to do, though, is to expend that capacity on herself. So instead, she directs it towards others, even complete strangers. And that's where she finds her calling, her destiny is to make other people happy, even if it's at the expense of doing it to herself. Now, it could be argued that as Amélie's help isn't sought, that she's simply an interfering nuisance, a busybody, playing with the lives of others as a way of avoiding reality and what's missing out in her own life.
I love that it is actually a film, an uplifting movie about an utter busybody, an utter interfering prat.
But you'll have perhaps guessed that that's not the way I view Amélie.
No, nor I.
I don't view it that way at all. She's an emotional recluse, but she's got a large heart, and she begins to find a use for that by bringing happiness to others. And her actions, some even very simple, like reconnecting a sad and lonely man with the simple joys of his childhood and then his family, mending the broken heart of a concierge, or simply helping a blind man to experience the vibrancy of the street that he's trying to cross, are just the most touching, heartwarming, uplifting things. They bring more happiness into the world, and therefore they bring more happiness to the viewer. There's an element of mischief and devilment to the character, and Amélie finds ways to punish those who are cruel and unkind to her friends, and the same element of mischief and devilment exists in the film as a whole. I feel bad about it every time, but one of the funniest moments comes from what should be the tragic, if absurd, death of Amélie's mother. The film moves at a fast pace. It's a blur of smiles and colours, saturated with sumptuous reds and greens, through to a climax where the pace slows, almost stops, and here, some of the most touching moments, it allows Amélie to ruminate on what she's missing out on. In a scene where she's shown what she could be missing on video, which, like her, is at one remove from real life, Amélie reflects in the way that she has kept herself distanced from the world, and the power of the potential for regret and loss is almost overwhelming, or it is to me anyway. And the characters are played charmingly. Amélie in particular, Audrey Tautou, has this warmth and vitality that just shines through the screen. And the charm of the film is enhanced by animation and other effects that show Amélie's mood and thoughts, and they're part of the magic and fit into the setting in ways that similar devices in the likes of Ally McBeal resolutely failed to do.
I'm glad you went there. I thought you were
oh no, I was
raising the spectre of Ally McBeal just to smack it down. Thank goodness for that. Yeah,
we'll say nothing praiseworthy about Ally McBeal. Thank you very much. No,
Amélie contains no dancing babies.
I think it's one of the things that marked out Ally McBeal was that it tried to shoehorn those things in, and it just didn't work. Whereas in Amélie, it does. It fits. I mean, it's a fantastical and unreal world, but it's populated with relatably flawed, interesting and amusing characters, and more important, with very real emotions.
It's one of those brilliant extras. It's a very difficult thing to pull off. But I hear people bandy about the phrase magical realism, and it's probably more difficult a tone to achieve than any other, I think, as a genre, because people often overdo the whimsy, or it's very hard to read stuff in. I would point to this as being the perfect example of magical realism.
Yep.
I think this is the best that's been done in film.
Whimsy's a thing. Whimsy is such a hard thing to get right.
It's a double-edged sword.
Wes Anderson, perhaps the greatest exponent of whimsy. Amélie is up there. If it's too try hard, or it stops too long to try and reflect on itself, then it's a car crash. It's terrible. Amélie just bombs along. Whimsy is part of this world. You accept it, and it's magical. And all of this, of course, is underwritten by a fantastic score by Jan Tiersen. Beautiful, moving, light, happy. Very, very French in terms of choice of instruments.
But we forgive them.
The accordions, but it fits because it's a Paris that doesn't exist. It's a sort of hyper-real Paris. Everything's magnified, but it's just what helps make it such a magical setting. It's whimsical, it's magical, and it's dazzling. And as far as I'm concerned, it's utterly, utterly full of joy and optimism and delight. And it made me beam with smiles the first time I saw it, and it still has that power.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film in almost every regard. If you want to talk technically, it's just beautifully shot. Yep. It's some amazing cinematography in it. Looks gorgeous.
It is. I used the word I read about it. It's sumptuous. It's such a richness to it visually.
Yeah, I'm glad it's in here because I can kind of use it as a proxy for my love of Wes Anderson films as well. But this probably it does a pretty good job of outclassing them, at least in terms of that kind of more whimsical style things, because it is so beautifully done. I'm also impressed by the way that it does manage to build drama. I mean, almost every film we're going to talk about in this the drama will be based on people doing unpleasant things to each other. And with one arguable minor exception, there is nothing unpleasant in this film. It's all nice things. No. It's just nice things happening to people and still managing to craft an effective drama from it, which is incredibly rare.
I mentioned like the mischievous devilment portions when Monsieur Collignon is being really cruel to Lucien and Amélie exacts revenge, but it's pranks really. It's nothing that's really harmful, just maybe to teach him a lesson to. Yeah,
when you're talking about the extent of the revenge being essentially making slippers slightly smaller and things like that.
So yeah, it's just this wonderful film.
Of all the films you've picked, this is I'm the most. It's not my favourite of the films you've got on your list, clearly, because we both agree on Lawrence of Arabia and one other that you'll talk about in a minute. But I think this is the one I'm most pleased that you put on your list, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I remember going to see it, and cynical bell end that I am, like I went into this movie. I remember going to see it at the cinema, and I was there. I remember vividly having had a shit week. In particular, it had been a really shitty day. I was going there thinking to myself, I know everybody says it's great, but I'm really not in the mood. I don't like the French in general. I'm only joking. I've got nothing against it. I've grown out of that unfounded prejudice.
Yeah, well, you're not a teenager anymore.
No, at the time, I thought I didn't like French people for some arbitrary reason. French people are so annoying. And I was there with someone I didn't particularly want to be there with. And I come out of this film 90 minutes later, and not even metaphorically, literally, I did a wee jig going out the door, and I jumped and I clicked my heels. I did that thing with jumping heels. I hurt my foot doing it, as it happens, because I landed awkwardly.
That's very you.
Not that I've got a history of that kind of thing. But I really didn't care about that. It's the happiest I've been coming out of a cinema. Yeah. It's this weird, intoxicating thing. I would like to see some really angry teenage jihadi with like a massive chip on his shoulder and the worst attitude in the world go in and watch this film. See what he's like when he comes out. Because I am willing to bet that there's no such thing as a person who will not be made happier by watching this film. And if that...
whether they admit it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And if that in and of itself is not one of the greatest achievements in cinema, I don't know what is. And if that isn't reason for including this on someone's favourite list, then I don't know what is. I think this was a really nice pick.
Thank you.
Yes.
And that's what, it's just joy. Joy's... It's good. It's good to be happy.
There's nothing wrong with that. The world would be a better place if we were all happier. And this film made everybody who saw it happier.
Yeah.
So I'm sure if we dug deep enough into the IMDb message boards, we would find someone who wasn't, or at least claimed not to be. But by and large, I think it's a film that exists to make people happy, and does it admirably. And a film needn't have a loftier goal than that. It's almost a bonus that the technical aspects of it are as good as they are. Yeah,
it's just a very, very well made film, but it's all in service of, yes, you'll come out of this film, or you'll finish watching this film feeling better.
Yeah. And if you're not happy with that result, get in the sea. It's almost, I'm guessing, Scott, have you purposely juxtaposed it with the next film you wanted to talk about, just as the complete antithesis?
Yeah, I thought I'd go for a bit of a mood swing demographic on this one. As we seamlessly transition from the happiest film to perhaps the least happy film that you can imagine in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, which is a Korean film, Chan-wook Park. It's not his first film, I think it's maybe his sixth, I think. There's a few before it, but I think it's really the first film that brought him any kind of attention outside
first in his Vengeance trilogy, isn't it?
Exactly.
It was his hit, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's one immediately before it. Joint strike area, joint security area, I think it is okay, but it really had nothing. If you'd watched that film, you would never have expected that the next film the guy makes was Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, which is a real tour de force and bleakness. It's a story of a young man. He is deaf and mute. He has a sister who desperately needs a kidney transplant, and unfortunately he's fired from his job and no longer seems to be able to provide for his sister. He embarks upon a scheme aided by his anarchist girlfriend of kidnapping his Well, actually, I'm jumping ahead of myself because one of the bleakest bits in the first instance is there does not seem to be a donor for his sister's transplant operation immediately available, so he decides to go into the black market, effectively trading one of his kidneys for a promise that they will find one for his sister. Is double-crossed and left without a kidney himself, and they've taken his 10 million won. Then the doctors find a suitable transplant patient, but he has no money to pay for it, so embarks on a scheme to kidnap his former boss's daughter, hold her ransom, to try and get the money for this operation. That doesn't work out so well for reasons we'll perhaps go on to, but it then becomes an escalating circle of violence and revenge where things just go from worse to worse to worse, and it's such an interesting narrative thing of someone doing a despicable thing but for an entirely understandable and almost a laudable reason, and how that very quickly spirals out of all control.
And all played out against a backdrop of gay Parisian hyper magical realism.
Yes, you see what I mean by mood swings. There's little joy to be had in this film. It is not a film of happy sunsets or anything like that. It's very bleak, it's very downbeat. It's remarkable in the way it builds this atmosphere. The central hook around it being built is really the deaf-mute status of its lead, which leads to some unfortunate situations, but also means because they're trying to convey that, they use some tremendous use of, in many cases, silence and other such things. It's a very atmospheric film for that reason. The narrative is strong. Stylistically, it's just so powerful, and that really helps bring it on, hammer home the way that the narrative is going. Certainly not a film you're going to watch to raise your spirits in any kind of meaningful sense, but it is such a powerful work of how you can really create something affecting, necessarily in this case by being so depressing and so bleak, but that is no means a way to stop it from being enjoyable in that kind of strange sense where it's nothing in it is actually pleasant or enjoyable, but it still creates a remarkable viewing experience.
It's not a film you enjoy. Your enjoyment comes through appreciation of...
I'm trying not to make a sweeping generalisation, so that's something in the Korean cinema I've been exposed to, but it's something that Korean cinema seems to do particularly well. Yeah,
guys like Kai-Duk Kim have made a career out of this kind of thing.
That and sort of sudden flashes of brutality. Yes. That's kind of the trademark of that particular vein of...
There's just this trick of making utter bleakness, compelling viewing.
Yeah.
I think of films like we saw at the Edinburgh Film Festival a few years ago, Scott, A Girl with Black Soil.
Yes, with A Girl with Black Soil or something like that.
Yeah, With a Girl with Black Soil. Incredibly depressing film. Utterly captivating. This is a horrible film. Horrible things happen. Nobody's happy, and you just have to watch it.
It's the important thing about it is it's one of those films that's got it's got the courage of its conviction. And this is again, like you said, Drew, the Korean cinema that I've been exposed to, I've seen, there's this rich vein of this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's not limited to that. It's a vibrant cinematic culture. But they do this particularly well. It's one of those films where there's something really satisfying about an ending, and it was probably the bleakest ending I'd seen up until that point. It wasn't until I watched another Korean film in the last couple of years, I Saw the Devil, that I saw something bleaker than this. That sort of bleak ending where no one comes away happy.
No.
If nothing else, it acknowledges that these are bad people. If you do reprehensible stuff like this, you are probably going to be subject unto that yourself.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a happy ending.
Yeah.
And it has the courage of that conviction. It doesn't feel like it needs to tie things up, and it doesn't feel like the guy needs to get the operation for his sister and suddenly everything's all right.
Yeah.
Not to ruin anything, but it doesn't really work out for anybody.
Yeah. It doesn't suffer from the problem with so many Western films, at least bigger budget ones, and in America in particular. It doesn't suffer from focus groupism.
No, exactly.
No studio exec, no focus group.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's a downbeat ending, we have to put an upbeat ending. Yeah. No, it doesn't fit. It doesn't belong.
They are quite comfortable with the notion of a film being the theme being, you've made your bed.
Yes.
Now, over the course of the next 2 hours,
now you're dying it bloodily.
Now you're going to die in it, yeah. It's just, it does that thing where, those sudden bursts of violence that, again, that Korean cinemas there's a scene, remember the scene with the baseball bat on the stairs, is it?
Yeah.
I want to say, little flashes like that are just phenomenal. And again, it almost feels dirty to say that you have not taken pleasure in having enjoyed the film, because the enjoyment isn't a pleasurable enjoyment; it's a satisfaction.
I don't
know.
I think maybe the words enjoyment is the wrong word.
Yeah,
it's rewarding viewing. It's not enjoyable viewing.
Yeah,
They're not synonymous.
I guess part of the wider reason that this is on my list is it's a great example of a bit of cinema that is not afraid to push everything out to the extremes. And that is, it's certainly not uniquely Asian, although I would argue in recent years, in the last couple of decades, it's probably best identified with.
It's become a bit of a calling
Far
card.
East. Korea in particular, but also some of the Japanese works, guys like Shinju Tekamuto, the guys, things like the Tetsuo films, Body Hammer, even some of Takeshi Kitano's work, Takeshi Miike's.
Takeshi Miike, yeah.
So this is part of the reason for my inclusion on this is kind of a cipher for all of those kind of films where they're not afraid to really push everything out to limits. And sometimes that produces abominations, and sometimes it produces great things. And certainly if you look at the things that have come out in the West, some of it's alternately brilliant or great. Things like Lars von Trier's career is based around this. Some of his works are great, some of which are absolutely abysmal. There's some guys who, like Gaspar Noé, is also doing a similar kind of thing, who has never done anything of worth that I'm concerned with. But again, I would still watch his films, and I'm glad to have a reaction to it like that.
Yeah.
Things like one of my least favourite films last year was Under the Skin, which did a similar sort of things of trying to push what you can do with cinema and these kind of things out as far as you can get it, within the realms of it still being a vaguely slightly commercial context. And I think it's worth watching all of these things, even if you wind up hating them. But it does provoke a reaction. It's a strong enough bit of art that you can have a reaction to it one way or the other.
Yeah, I think
gaining something from it and enjoying it are not necessarily the same thing.
I'm glad that these things exist. For lots of reasons. One, it's pushing your own experiences. It's pushing you out of your comfort zone, perhaps. But it's just nice to see something different, because so much stuff can seem, it could be the best made film, but it conforms to the same structure, the same narrative. It feels formulaic, it's not quite the word, but safe.
Yeah,
and it's just other things that are going to push that, to stretch, to make you think differently, to provoke a reaction, as you say, that those films existing are good, but they just don't seem to exist in this hemisphere all that much.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to focus group. I mean, I think comic movies are a great example of this. They're focus grouped to appeal to the broadest possible cross demographic, and it's working for them. It's making a lot of money, but I don't think you'll ever see anything powerful or moving that's ever going to come out of a Marvel franchise, because it's the way that it is calculated. It means that it completely precludes that. It's going to be all things to all men, and it'll do an okay job of it most of the time, and it'll be enjoyable, and it's good that they're there.
Doesn't mean they're not enjoyable, but those are very much more about business than art.
Yes.
And they suffer for it.
Yeah, and there is nothing wrong with that. I enjoy most of the Marvel films. I enjoy watching them, and
they don't live with you, though.
No, they're all essentially forgettable. They'll merge into one, and I'm not going to think about them in 5 or 10 years' time. Whereas something like Sympathy, Mr. Vengeance, I watched it again recently just on this. I'm not sure I've actually watched it in the intervening. What was that? 7 years, something like that.
Even a wee bit more.
Even more. I think it was 2002. This came out. I can't remember quite when I first watched it though.
Yeah,
it was long before we started even podcasting.
So it's. But to be honest, I remember it as clearly from when I was watching it last night as I did from when I watched it a decade or so ago.
Yeah.
One of these films that really sticks in the mind. There's a few films like that that I think are powerful in that way. That's kind of why I've been putting this on my list.
There you go.
Next up is, it's Laputa, Castle in the Sky.
Laputa, Castle in the Sky, one of the earlier Studio Ghibli films, and actually my introduction to Studio Ghibli, which is one of the reasons why it stayed with me. I've got this really weird scenario played out where I think I was in high school and I was off on a particular day sick, and I sat there at home flicking through the channels, and this thing was coming on STV, the Scottish ITV channel, this animated film. What's this? And I sat there in my dressing gown, and I've never been so compelled by an animated film since I think my first experience of film full stop was being taken to see The Jungle Book by my mum when it was reissued in cinemas back in 1980, 1983, yeah, some time ago. And I sat there and watched this film. I had no ideas of the origin. I could tell by the art style that it was probably Japanese in origin, but it was a dubbed version, not the more recent dubbed version, obviously, with James Van Der Beek and such like. But I sat there and watched the thing, and I was utterly swept away in this magical fantasy ride that I best describe as kind of if Jules Verne had written a book specifically for kids. it would probably be a lot like this. This, again, it's not a magical realism thing. It's set in a recognisable world. It's not steampunk necessarily, but it feels like one of the films that's kind of formed the genesis of that. It's this heavily industrialised world.
Yeah.
You imagine it as being pitched around the time of the Industrial Revolution, but there are all these magical sort of, well, apparently magical sort of flying machines and very unlikely sort of structures and very ungainly, sorry to keep using the word flying machines, but obviously it's a recurring theme in Miyazaki's works. And this story about this kid whose father was searching for this mythical lost island that floats in the sky, and his chance encounter with a young girl who has been kidnapped by some sky pirates and who has around her neck this pendant formed of a particular type of stone called Levistone, which is very well named because it's the stone which gives this mythical island its levitational properties. And they become entwined in this fantastical adventure in a race to find this island in the sky, ahead of the sky pirates and ahead of the sinister government agent and his squad. And in terms of sheer imagination, and that it took place in my formative, I think probably the most formative period of my cinema watching years, probably like my mid-teens and whatnot, I was so, or early to mid-teens, I was so swept away in this thing. I was so fascinated by it. I did everything I could to find out about it. I wrote to STV, who denied having any knowledge of this thing. I started to think that I was amazed I even got a letter back from them, but when I did, I got this letter back. This was pre-email, guys. This was pre-email. This was pre-internet, so keep in mind I was trying to find out what the hell this thing was that I'd seen on a TV station, who denied that they'd shown it, even though I had part of it taped on a VHS tape that my dad went and then taped over some bloody football on. And I did everything I could to find out what this film was. And I understand that there might have been some sort of rights issue around it at the time and things like that made it quite bizarre that it was shown in UK terrestrial TV and why it didn't show up again in the intervening years. But obviously now, I went so far as to find, was it Forbidden Planet? We're going to import a Laserdisc copy of it for me from Japan for 150 quid. I have no idea how I thought I was going to get that kind of money together at the age of like 14 or 15.
Also, you don't have a Laserdisc player.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the point is that there was also, I'd found a place in Edinburgh who would convert Laserdisc onto VHS for me. But so I had this whole big thing set up. All I needed to do was find £150 and I could have a copy of this film. So enchanted was I by it. And obviously now it's a trivial matter because we're living in the age where, quite rightly, the Ghibli back catalogue are now subject to beautiful restorations. And some of, obviously the Laserdisc and the DVD versions, you can have the original subtitles, which most of us probably purists would prefer to do. But fortunately, when Disney signed a distribution deal with them, they have invested some time and effort in the dubs. So actually, you have these wonderful dubbed versions that have made them far more accessible now. And like there are kids in primary, junior school who are obsessed with these things now. We've got this wonderful access to them now, and it really excites me that kind of imagination is being shared and informing kids at such a young age, because I wish that I had seen a film as magical as this at the age of 5 or 6. I cannot wait to sit down and watch this with my little girl when she's old enough. I am so excited.
I got started getting my nieces now into Studio Ghibli films. My sister's continued it, just bought some more for them yesterday, and just sit wide-eyed, open-mouthed, drinking this incredible film experience in. And Laputa, one of the top ones that they love to. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Well, my wife is a primary school teacher, and she knows all about Totoro, not because she sat and watched it, but because kids that she's taught are obsessed with Studio Ghibli. And I think, obviously, and there is no doubt that Studio Ghibli have produced better films in this sense. Spirited Away is a better film than Laputa Castle in the Sky. Probably Princess Mononoke is a better film than Laputa Castle in the Sky, but Laputa is my favourite, I think, in terms of opening the door to probably my first experience of outside of the traditional sort of anime titles to Japanese animation. This thing that I didn't know at the time was Studio Ghibli. That had already produced these other fantastic works, and happened at just a particular time in my life that it has always stuck with me. And I can't I can understand that, there are better films than that now in the Studio Ghibli stable, but this is still my favourite.
Yeah.
For nostalgic reasons, for the sheer romance of it. I can't see past that, and I just love it dearly.
Yeah, of course, Studio Ghibli has been quite important to me lately, and of course it's important to my wife, as anyone who went to my wedding will know. It's a bit of a Totoro theme.
There's a little bit of a Totoro theme running through your wedding recently, yes.
Because, god damn it, I like it, so I'm glad it was on this list. But I mean, I could quite easily have said my entire top 5 favourite films were all Studio Ghibli films, and I could have defended that quite easily.
No one would argue with you.
Again, there were several Studio Ghibli films could have made that into my list.
I think when you're picking the top 5, you let something like a Studio Ghibli in, and then you kind of feel guilty and feel, well, I kind of have to pick something else.
Yeah.
But honestly, if I had said Laputa, Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, and I don't know, probably Totoro, and like one other, probably pick any other one, honestly.
Craven Fireflies.
Yeah, no one's going to argue.
Yeah.
No one's going to argue. You almost feel compelled to pick some other stuff for your 5, just for a bit of diversity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, they're all wonderful films. I've not seen a single Studio Ghibli film that I've not liked. Even the stuff that is not by Miyazaki himself is still strong enough to be to warrant the brand name of Ghibli, if you like.
Yeah, some of them aren't brilliant, but none of them are less than good. Yeah, certainly enjoyable.
And especially if you remember, most of these were taking place in a dark time for animation, where Disney was on the rocks and could not put a decent film out to save their life.
And largely unbeknownst to us on the other side of the planet, there is this amazing, flourishing...
Like from Disney, like maybe the late 60s and then up to probably Beauty and the Beast at the start of the 90s, there's nothing Western-wise like it was the big films.
Open season, anyone? The thing about it is, and where they triumph time over Disney's home stuff, and even now, is purely an imagination.
Mm-hmm.
The production value, the technical aspects of these films, the writing, are match Disney toe for toe. Disney cannot compete with the sheer imagination on display.
No. Yeah.
For the longest time, Disney couldn't see past talking animals.
Yeah.
Studio Ghibli, within their first 4 or 5 films, have got kids, sky pirates, like chasing a floating island in the sky, being chased by stone robots.
Yeah.
What? You cannot compete with that. It's the sheer imagination of those films, coupled with his obsession with, like, Porco Rosso, I'd probably pick as another favourite. That whole theme of his, there's something so magical about everything that he infused into those early, especially the early ones. That
Magical's the world. Magical's the word, rather. I've never.
I thought it was Grease.
Hey,
I'm here all week.
I've never been a great fan of Disney. I've never rated their output apart from a couple films, The Jungle Book, Aladdin, Lilo and Stitch, which is one of their minor works, but I think is a fantastically anarchic film.
Yeah, we both agreed on that. I think we saw it about the same time, and we're like, why aren't people raving about this more? This is hilarious.
Because it's quite un-Disney-like too, Lilo and Stitch, actually. The anarchic nature of it. But some Studio Ghibli's always had a magic about it. And there's something for to compare them to Disney again, for something that given Disney's entire market is kids, they never seem to get childhood done that well.
And it's not that they lack in humour, because arguably, like, Disney deal more in humour.
Possibly.
Probably Studio Ghibli. You'll get more laughs at this.
More humour than emotion, rather.
Yeah, they understand that. It's the fantastical. They stop short of achieving the fantastical. And it just never seemed to be a problem for Studio Ghibli.
No.
They're like, what? Sorry, lions. Sorry, a guy, his dad dies, he's a lion cub, what? Right, all right, okay, that's brilliant. Here's a wash house full of ghosts. in a magical fantasy alternate reality version of the thing that a girl went through when she was on a road trip with her mum and dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's the magic, the fantasy, the fantastical nature of Studio Ghibli stuff. There's something. There are other Japanese films that do it too, so there's something maybe inherent in the culture, but that grasps the magic of childhood, of being a child that Disney doesn't get. And also, imagination, as you say, because, Disney, well, we've got a princess. What's up next? Well, there's this princess, right? Well, there's this princess. And then, like I say, you've got things like flying pirates and things, and even just when it comes to, like, a strong female character, like, well, we've got this teenage witch who's becoming independent.
Yeah.
Like, what have you got? Princess?
Yeah.
It's like, no, Studio Ghibli wins.
The way as I sit here now, I'm trying to think of a way of summing it up in a sentence. I'm trying to think of how to put it in a box. And the best I can come up with is that each of those Studio Ghibli films is like a dream I wish I'd had. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does rather like that.
Yeah. That's the best way I can think of summing it up. But I've prattled on long enough about that anyway. If you haven't watched it already, watch it or I'll personally come round and kill you. How magical is that? I won't really kill you, don't...
Well, no, because then
that was harsh.
Then you wouldn't be able to watch it.
No.
But have you heard of the Ludovico technique?
Exactly.
Okay, the next film is perhaps not the most original film to like and consider one of my favourites, but there was...
I think it's one that the vast majority of people will agree on, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, there are some films which are certainly better, including films I've mentioned in this, but, for instance, to talk about Lawrence of Arabia, it's amazing. It's my favourite film ever. I think it's magnificent. You can watch that a lot, though.
Yeah.
Not just because of the length, but just because of the scope of it. It's not a film that you can watch regularly. It's an occasion to watch that film. The Big Lebowski, I could probably watch every day. That's not that much of an exaggeration.
No.
So, just in case anybody's been living under a rock for the last 15 years, but
15 years, right?
Well,
I guess
it's
it
actually
is.
17.
Oh, yeah, I guess it is. God almighty.
And this is I'll mention the plot quickly. This is a film that I, as well as many others, came to on VHS. I think it was a box office bomb, which was a bit of a surprise given it just followed Fargo, for which the Coen brothers had won an Oscar, and had put them straight into the mainstream.
It was their Shawshank Redemption, essentially, right?
Yeah. And the Big Lebowski bombed. But it was the next couple of years. It's happened every now and then in cinema, but the word cult is overused, but it certainly started like that. That it caught on. People would watch it in video. Craig and I watched it similar time. I guess Scott as well, round about then. The memorable dialogue gets in your head. You start quoting it. You recognise other people quoting it. Suddenly it's a thing. Yeah. And then it took off, and it's a huge film now. It's the tale of this peaceful soul known as the Dude.
Who abides.
The Dude, yes.
If you need to know what he does during the course of this movie, he abides.
Now, when the intro from the very famous stranger narrator says, sometimes there's a man, well, he's the man for his time and place. And that was the Dude in Los Angeles, except the Dude is out of time. His time has passed. The Dude is a man from the 70s, and the world has passed him by, and he either doesn't notice or doesn't care.
Probably a bit of both.
He doesn't want anything from the world. He's got enough drugs and alcohol and bowling to keep him happy, and he doesn't hurt anybody. Yeah. But he's also out of his element. Because he's basically a stoner who's wandered into the middle of a Raymond Chandler story and been told, by the way, you're the hero. It's kind of a strange film too, because that you could ostensibly build an entire film around the concept of one man wanting to replace a rug is crazy, really. A soiled rug like that, but what it really is a parody of film noir. Most notably and directly in this instance, The Big Sleep. But like all of the greatest parodies, it's done with both a deep affection for and thorough understanding of the source material, which is one of the things that makes it great. Well, there's so many great things, but one of the great things is how rich the film is and how full of attention to detail. When it's chock full of lines and mannerisms and props and other details that could easily be missed in a first viewing. Yeah.
Will be missed on a first viewing. And a second and a third.
Exactly, and they add such texture and depth to the film and its characters. I mean, look, for example, at Brandt standing solemnly, head bowed at the side of the frame when the Big Lebowski is asking the Dude about the measure of a man. Yeah. Or the repetition of phrases that crop up. Yeah. Sometimes that he's heard on television or from another character and he repeats them. I maybe not noticed it the first time, but it's just an incredibly layered film.
And some of it just leads nowhere.
Most of it leads nowhere.
Most of it leads nowhere.
Essentially, the entire film leads nowhere, but that doesn't stop it being fantastic.
It's arguably their most random film. It starts with the most random premise. Somehow, this thing should have spun off into cataclysmic chaos at every other line in the script, and somehow it doesn't. And do you know what? It's the characters.
Yeah, I'm going to touch back on that a bit, because that's one of my main points. But what helps make it work, though, is something that I've always considered the strength of the Coens, and it's why something like Intolerable Cruelty and The Lady Killers were such disappointments, because they weren't working off their own script. Their strength has always been their script,
their material.
And given that it's a film about stoners and the stoner just being lost in the world, thrust into the middle of it and have no idea what he's doing, it's almost a farce noir. Because even the narrator gets lost at the start, doesn't know what he's talking about. The dude doesn't know what he's talking about. It's incredibly tightly scripted. I mean, every single and every word is carefully placed. It's deliberate. You watch that and you think that that's ad-libbing or something. It's not.
No, it's so tightly controlled.
Yeah, but every single role is filled so well. The characters are so superbly acted that every and ah feels natural.
Actually, I'm wrong when I say it's tightly controlled. It's so tightly controlled. It's probably more accurate to say that these characters, everything is so tightly embodied.
Yes, that's
that these people are living and breathing.
I mean, exactly to that point, I mean, it helps that most of the characters were written with these actors in mind. Most of them are people that have worked with the Coen brothers before. They were written with these characters in mind, so give right to them their strength. Even then, you just have this incredible synergy that these excellent performances of incredibly memorable, very, very well written characters, and pretty much every character in the film is memorable. I mean, you could list them forever. I mean, you've got the Marlboro Man stranger, puppy like Donnie, angry but passionate Walter.
Walter is one of my favourite characters in cinema.
Yeah, I would.
Full stop. And I
would fully support that.
Not been a fan of John Goodman in the past. I'm not particularly a fan of him now. That is Walter, if nothing else, if that was John Goodman's legacy. Yeah,
it's enough, isn't it?
You're welcome to whatever you want, pal. Unbelievable.
I like John Goodman, but yeah, what is Walter? It's incredible. But every character's memorable, because you can go on, like, you got Maud, the Nihilists, Brandt, the Big Lebowski, Jesus Quintana. I mean, that creep can roll, man. But every single character is memorable. Even the most minor character, apart from maybe, the woman that's working in the coffee shop, doesn't really count as a character, I guess. But Bonnie Lebowski, everybody, there's something unique about them that sticks in your mind. But more importantly, it's damn funny. I mean, there are moments of farce when interrogating unsuccessfully a 15-year-old boy about where the stolen money has gone. There's moments of genre subversion. The dude very famously using the old detective trick of making the pencil impression on the pad to see what
with unexpected results.
And then just like moments of utter deadpan humour, because I mean the dude isn't stupid, but perhaps he's slightly detached from the world. But just the moments of deadpan humour, it's like you can imagine where the porno goes from here. What, he fixes the cables. It's like,
no.
Will, you're not a golfer.
The only thing I can think of, the only reason I know that people who don't like this film it's a particular brand of irreverence, I think. Is irreverence the word I'm looking for? The humour that I know some people haven't engaged with, but anyone who remotely engages with it is in love with this film, which is why it's been so successful. It's written in this very particular language that probably raw, and I would love to read the script actually, because raw on the page, I'm not sure it would work. It's almost like this thing's been written and the Lebowskis are like, okay, we've written this out, listen.
The Lebowskis?
The Lebowskis, sorry.
The Coens.
The Coens. Sorry, the Coens. They go, right, it's okay, don't worry though, we're going to translate this for you.
Yeah.
Right, they're not so much directing it as they are translating this bizarre material into something that you can compute. And I'm not even sure of consciously being aware of how I'm computing it. First time I watched it, and I come very close to putting this on my list. I can't remember why I didn't, to be honest. It might have been a diversity thing. What diversity thing? What's more diverse than this? This, famously, I went through two ex-rental VHS copies of this, both of which had only been viewed less than about 5 times each
year. I bought my VHS tape out as well.
Yeah, wore out a rental grade tape, 2 of those, watching this endlessly. There was a point, I can't remember what my little statistic was, I was keeping track of it. In a year, I had watched it something like 290 times. I had literally put it on 5-6 nights a week.
I mean,
and just had it on in the background.
I did similar things. You both noticed too that I ripped the audio from it and listened to it on the way to university and stuff.
Yeah, I've still got it on my iPod. I've still got the audio from
I think I still have the original mini disc I did, because that's how long ago this was, how long ago my love affair started. Now, I can't remember exactly my impression, but I know I liked this film from the first viewing. A lot of people don't, and I can understand that.
I didn't engage with it first viewing. It wasn't until I went back and watched it again second time.
But it's obviously something that made you want to.
Other people like, you're wrong about it, Craig. and something went, and I had to go back. Second viewing, I'm like, yeah, okay. Third viewing, hooked.
Yeah,
that was it. Game over.
Yeah.
In common with a lot of the Coen brothers films, The Big Lebowski isn't about plot.
Yeah.
It's not really, I mean, some of their films have more plot. This has a plot, really, but it's more just to buff the dude around so you get the reactions of the characters.
It's got a random stream of consciousness passing as a plot.
So it's not about plot, like some of it's about character. And in the big case of The Big Lebowski, it's also about an attitude.
Yeah.
Dudism, as it's become.
What an ethos, dude.
Just say what you want about the tenets of The Big Lebowski, at least it's an ethos. But going back to when we're talking about Blade Runner, whereas I did like this from the beginning, the fact there's no strong narrative, there's no real story payoff, I really think that's what can put a lot of people off. And I understand that, but that's why it deserves a second viewing, because you watch it first, you know how it is, so you can stop thinking about the plot.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand people after the first viewing, but it's what makes the second viewing and even the 20-second viewing that much more rewarding.
This Big Lebowski is as rich in character and is as landmark as much of a landmark for character for me as Blade Runner is from a visual standpoint. If that makes sense.
I mean, so if anybody's listening who has watched The Big Lebowski but never really got it, I certainly urge you to give it another go. Like, put aside the lack of plot and just embrace the character and the mood, because that's what it's all about, and it does it better than pretty much anything else.
If it weren't for the fact that I saw that it was already on your list, I would have had to put it in as my favourite film, because it probably is. But I haven't put it in there just simply because I wanted it to be representative of my stuff in general, and The Big Lebowski is representative of nothing. It's not even representative of the Coen brothers' other work. It exists by itself on this little island. It is a fantastic island, and I love being able to visit it, but it is a strange, weird, lovely film that is just beautifully encapsulated, and it's so brilliant.
I'm glad it's not my life, but I love looking in on it.
Exactly.
It's just an incredible thing. It's so rare to find a film that you could just watch anytime, anywhere.
Yeah.
That's the defining characteristic of it. Lawrence of Arabia remains my favourite film. I haven't watched a film as many times as I've watched The Big Lebowski.
I don't think anything's
by
even
a
come
long
close for me.
chalk. By a long chalk. And I've never grown bored of it. I've never not laughed at it.
No.
I couldn't tell you a joke, or apart from another film which is a comedy that I'm still laughing at on the third watch. Never mind the 300th watch or whatever ridiculous it is now.
We're probably all the same. Imagine that watching The Big Lebowski would be the weirdest time, because you'd see me giggling and laughing like 2 or 3 seconds before anything's actually said on screen, because I know how well it is. But I just watched that. I never ever tire of it.
It was the best reason for DVD to have appeared as a format, to be honest, because laser rot takes a lot more time to kick in, a lot more watches to kick in than it does VHS degradation. Put it that way.
So we mentioned that, of course, there's a certain parody element of film noir in The Big Lebowski, which would feature hard-boiled cops, and of course, there's no cop more hard-boiled than tequila.
Beautiful.
Hard-boiled.
We've reinstituted the tenuous links department.
That is
I
beautiful.
didn't get that memo.
That is sorry, we've gone from having abandoned it to having reached peak.
We've embraced it.
Peak tenuousness.
That was beautiful.
So, hard-boiled, one of...
That was the Big Lebowski of links he just pulled off there.
The John Woo film Hard Boiled, featuring his frequent leading man, shall we say, Chow Yun-fat. And the plot of it is barely worth mentioning, as with a lot of John Woo's films, and it's not really the narrative element of it that I'm really putting this in for. Basically, you could pick any one of John Woo's rough trilogy comprising The Killer and this and A Better Tomorrow. Lots of John Woo films that have embraced the kind of Hong Kong action thing. But I suppose, just for reference, we'll include this. Chow Yun-fat's playing Tequila, a cop investigating triad dealings, mafia dealings. He kind of crosses paths with an undercover cop who's also trying to infiltrate the same gangs, and the two kind of bounce off each other on a couple of occasions before eventually teaming up to take care of a massive mafia gun-running operation. That is a very reductive way to handle the action that comes within, but it's not really a film that is based around its narrative strengths. It is, like all great action cinema, based on having tremendous action sequences, and again, part of the reason is I watched a lot of these in my formative years growing up, and the love of this has stayed with me ever since. So Hong Kong action is perhaps the peak of the genre, but you've also got all sorts of things from your Arnold Schwarzenegger films and all these other kind of action-oriented stuff. some of which holds up better than others, but I think having watched this again pretty recently, John Woo's stuff does kind of have a cut and a class above everything else that has managed to kind of maintain relevance even in this day and age. It's just a wonderfully kinetic experience, lots of tremendously fast work in the editing, lots of great shooting from both the cinematographic point and just simply shooting as Chow Yun-fat dives sideways over a multitude of objects, firing guns wildly.
With his unlimited ammo mod applied.
Yes.
He's definitely opened the developer's console.
Yes. A film where the entire swap to it is I think each character can be seen reloading once over the course of this entire film. Yep. And that is all they need for the rest of their infinite ammo clips as they pummel each other with just tremendous amounts of firepower. There's nothing particularly deep or complicated about my reasons for putting on this. It's just a tremendous amount of fun, as a lot of action cinema as can be when it's at its best. It's something that's seen as something of a downswing in the more PG-orientated era. You don't get a lot of this sort of thing. You'll see the occasional glimpse of it, normally coming from abroad, somewhere, probably Thailand or places where you might not expect it from. Even America, you're very rarely going to see it. You might see a Dread or something like that every now and again, which embraces the same kind of action and just drama coming from these ridiculous stunts and this kind of thing. You don't often see it these days, and I think that's a bit sad. But there's a whole back catalogue we can content ourselves with, and pretty much anything with Chow Yun-fat in it would scratch that itch for you. As I say, I do have a great appreciation for this kind of thing when done well. It can just be so satisfying to watch. The plot itself, as I say, doesn't hold up a lot of scrutiny, although for that, Chow Yun-fat does a tremendous job. He's tremendously charismatic and likeable. The same cast can be said of those co-members, the chief of police that's playing, everyone else, Tony Leung. Tremendous charismatic performances from all of them. It is, for nostalgic reasons, possibly the only film of this ilk that I will watch dubbed rather than subtitled, because it has a tremendously...
There's something majestic about that original dub.
Tremendous dub. It is... Again, it's one of these things that live in that quantum superposition state of being dreadful and brilliant at the same time. I don't think I'll belabor the point any more than this. It's just a fantastic slice of action film and a highly, highly enjoyable bullet ballet.
Yeah, it would never trouble my top 5 films, but it's a tremendously enjoyable film. It's got fantastic choreography, which John Woo's always done so as action choreography. It's daft, it's over the top, it's hugely entertaining. What I like so much about it is just that it's a genre piece done perfectly for the genre.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect film, it's not the best film, but again, this isn't the purpose of this podcast. It's about favourite, not best.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the same. But yeah, it's a genre piece done to the best that you could basically do that genre.
Yeah.
It's its own. It's almost its own genre, though, right? It's like, well, we all know what action cinema is, and then John Woo came along and was like, well, yeah, there's action cinema. Then I'm gonna show you this. And like, you used bullet ballet. I was going to cut in earlier and say, like, it's almost a cliche now to talk about bullet ballet and stuff, but honest, it's the choreography of it. The way he ringmasters this total anarchy is unbelievable. I remember the first time I watched this, it took me a couple of days, I think, to actually get round to watching the whole film, because like that opening shootout in the Wyndham Tea House, I remember sitting watching that thing and got to the end of it and I was slack-jawed. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. I'd been told this is insane. And I sat there and watched it, and I immediately rewound it back to the start of that scene. And then sit and watch the rest of the film. I watched that scene about 7 or 8 times over and over, slack-jawed. I'm like, the hell is this? That would have been considered like an amalgam of like the climax of about 10 other like Hollywood action films. Don't account for the bullet count and the body count in that opening scene alone. That sets the tone of the film.
What's so appealing about it too, compared to so many modern films too, is that, I mean, and sometimes it has its place in modern films, it doesn't rely on hyperkinetic editing for its action. It's just like, no, they just have well-planned camera movements, good choreography. Then they just shoot what people are doing, them flying over tables and stuff, and rely on the actual movement of the actual people as opposed to faking it by cutting away all the time.
Yeah, and actually using quite a lot of slow-mo as well.
Yeah.
The majesty of someone sprawling as they get,
it's quite the opposite of
times.
So many things now where you'd get, that scene in the tea house would probably have 30 cuts in it.
Oh yeah. Big time. There's something just, it was, like I think about Hard Boiled and The Killer, and I'm like, I'd be hard pressed to pick the two of them. This is the one that I was like most pleasant surprised to see on your list.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm glad someone put something like Hard Boiled in, because it's as beautiful and insane an action movie as Amélie is like a beautifully insane, uplifting, joyful movie. Like I can't quantify how much of a quantum leap, just to use all the QUs I can, over action movies we've been exposed to up until that time. This actually was like, literally, it wasn't the next time I saw something as arresting as this, or that had me as dumbstruck as this, was the first time I sat down with my breakfast one morning on a day. Again, I was sick from work that day, and I went downstairs in my dressing gown with a bowl of cornflakes to finally watch this Private Ryan film that everyone had been ranting on about. And by the end of the Normandy beach landing, I hadn't touched my cornflakes, were like just a soggy mess in my bowl. I was just sat there like, what the fuck just happened? Those are the only two times that's happened to me, Hard Boiled and Private Ryan. And Hard Boiled, obviously, an entirely different kettle of fish from Private Ryan, but just like so insanely different from anything I'd ever seen, and just holy smoke. And then to realise there was this whole genre of stuff, and that this stuff is out there. If you want to go and get it, there's more of this.
It's always, it doesn't really matter if it's always pleasing to see a thing done well. And that's where Hard Boiled falls into it.
Chow Yun-fat and John Woo are as important to action movies as Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers were to musicals.
Well, I thought you were going to finish that. That's important to action movies. So I obviously missed part of them.
Literally that important. And so much of what we take for granted with action now was defined by those early John Woo films. And actually, a lot of people, it's that weird thing of a lot of people still probably don't know that. They maybe didn't reach the popularity that the Ghibli films have with Western kids. That same thing didn't necessarily happen for John Woo's films over here. A lot of people's experience of John Woo now, it's still Hard Target, Face Off,
and then Given Up,
and unfortunately Broken Arrow. But just this remarkable body of work that is still, like, I still haven't seen anything as kinetic and as engaging in terms of just choreographed anarchy as Hard Boiled.
Yeah, like I say, it's always good to have a nice action film. It's also a bit of a cipher for things like just Bruce Lee films or any kind of martial arts work. We've got things like Tom Yong-gun, stuff like that, and there's all sorts of great things that can be had. Not anything that's necessarily deep characters or deep plot, but just really well shot action sequences do have their place in cinema, and I think it's important to recognise that. Yeah,
exactly. And John Woo perfected that to level that, like, it's interesting that you mentioned about Bruce Lee, because I was sitting here earlier thinking about the choreography of the shootouts in Hard Boiled is as impressive and perfectly executed as any fight scene in a Bruce Lee movie or a Jet Li movie, if you want to be more contemporary. I like it. Which means we've only got one left, right?
Goodfellas, which is unlike any mafia film that came before it. I mean, at times it's almost documentarian. It's a warts and all portrayal of gangster life. You know, this isn't the regal dynastic life of the Corleones. Goodfellas' world is dirty and it's messy, which is one of the ways it sets itself apart from other mob films. It doesn't romanticize the mafia lifestyle, though importantly, doesn't necessarily judge you either. Allows you to make your mind up for yourself, which is refreshing. I mean, there's glamour there, certainly. You can see this outsider kid who was an analogue for Martin Scorsese in his own real life. The outsider kid who observed everything, except when Scorsese saw the gangsters in the street, he thought, right, I'm not going to do that, might make some films about them. Henry Hill saw that, I want to be one of them. So you see the glamour there, and you see the appeal to him of the swagger, the power, the lifestyle, the respect that these gangsters in his neighbourhood got. But when Henry finally comes in from the outside and enters the world, we get to see what it really means and how, even if he doesn't realise that he's trapped. Because when Henry Hill famously tells us that as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster, there's something almost flat about the way he delivers that. There's no excitement there. And you certainly, there's one interpretation of it I sometimes subscribe to, that, you know, he's saying, what was I thinking?
Exactly.
Rather than, yes, I want to be a gangster. God, it's like,
it's almost like, oh God, you know what? Yep. 2020 hindsight. So as long as I remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
And again, in common with a couple of films we've talked about already, this is another film that isn't as much about plot as some people might think. It's about feeling. Like this, Goodfellas is what it feels like to be in the mafia. Because you've got Henry Hill's nostalgia-tinged voiceover all the time, but it's constantly contradicted by the reality of the pettiness and the violence and the small-mindedness and the garishness and the self-interest that's shown on screen while he's talking. And because for every moment of apparent glamour, there's one of mundanity. The Goodfellas mock the working schlub. Those people are fools having to work a 9 to 5 and they've got boring lives, but theirs is a life of banality as much as anybody else's. I mean, even a mafioso can have trouble with a babysitter. And it's weird. Goodfellas has this reputation for being really violent too, and if you look at it, it's not as violent as you might think.
No.
But the violence that is there is utterly brutal.
It's uncompromising.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and it serves a very important purpose.
Yeah.
You were saying about the fact that, crucially, it's never judgmental about these people. For me, and the reason why, because Goodfellas is the second film that you and I share, right?
Yes.
It's on my list of 5 as well. And for me, the most important thing about it is that it offers you the opportunity to make up your own mind, right? It is never any less than honest about what the consequences of this lifestyle are, right? I mean, even early on, you get a hint at it in the scene in the restaurant with Joe Pesci.
Yep.
And it turns out, he's joking, and the palpable relief on everyone's face when it turns out
incredible tension in that scene.
Unrealistic, unbelievable. Sorry, the tension that scene ratchets up, and straight away you have, as a viewer, have an implicit understanding of this is a world that I'm going to spend the next 2.5 hours laying this out for you, and you're going to find this as appealing. You're going to understand why these guys chose that lifestyle, but never be in any doubt there are consequences to that lifestyle.
There are consequences to it, but also there are other downsides. Well, Polly will come back to these 2 words a lot, but the mundanity and banality of some of it because it just becomes a thing they do. Despite the brutality of the violence and the often very clearly primal rage and primal feelings that drives it, it's also so mundane. That's what they do. It's part of the job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've whacked a guy, why don't we just stop by Tommy's mum's house and have a bite to eat before we go bury him? Henry's, in that scene, Henry's very clearly uncomfortable, but Jimmy and Tommy are just sitting, what's that? Hi, Ma. One looks one way, one looks the other. You know, talking about painting.
And that's the price. That's the price of the life they've chosen, is that you've accepted into your life these people for whom killing people is, to quote him, is no big deal.
Yep.
Right? At which point your fate is essentially sealed. There's no way back out of that.
Yeah.
There's a very real chance that things are going to turn out incredibly badly for you, because you're now living with a family who would think nothing of on this life. And actually, it's the one thing that Casino, which many people accuse of being a remake of Goodfellas, and it's absolutely not. It's the one thing that Casino conveys better in the final scenes of that entire attitude of, why take the risk? It's absolutely nothing to these people. If they have the slightest hint that you might cause some sort of problem years from now, you might be their best friend, and they will think, do you know what? Why take the risk? I'm going to shoot this guy in the head.
Self-interest rules all.
Absolutely, and that's the terrifying thing about it. But despite that, as a viewer, you still absolutely are intoxicated by this lifestyle.
It's so easy to see the appeal, but then it's the danger that's lurking there, and not even from what you think, because Tommy is a terrifying character because he's a psychopath. He's one of those people who, that scene in the restaurant where the very famous, what I'm a clown, I amuse you scene, it's incredibly tense. That scene could have ended so differently. You could have just killed someone. It could have been like the spider scene, right? There's no way to know with something like that.
Yeah.
But the really dangerous, really scary thing is you think, well, Tommy's the danger. Tommy you look out for.
Yeah.
Don't expect Jimmy. But the point after the
That's
Lufthansa heist, when it's almost like something like that behind Jimmy's eyes, and it's like, just going to kill everybody, it'll be easier.
That's what I was going to mention next, is
That's
that scene where is it Sunshine of Your Love by Cream starts playing, when he's sat in the bar. That is, to me, that is the pinnacle of Robert De Niro's acting career. That is my joint favourite single glance because I have such specific categories for things. In fact, it possibly is my favourite, a single glance conveying something about a character attention of all cinema, at the point at which you understand that just from a glance of his eyes that he's made a decision now that anyone that do you know what, actually this isn't worth it. Some of these people risk getting me in trouble. These people that I've spent my life living with, I'm going to do away with these people. And that is the terrifying thing. Yeah,
because that's nobody's expecting that.
That's coming out of the left field.
Conway, he's everybody's friend.
And he's no different.
So everybody's looking out for
in some respects, he's no different from Tommy.
In fact, worse, I think, because Tommy's the big, loud guy. Robert De Niro in that film, he's the crocodile just under the water.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know he's there.
Yeah.
You don't expect that danger. So, I'm going to come back to some character stuff later, but one of the things that, I mean, just as a cinephile and somebody that appreciates the craft of filmmaking, Goodfellas is amazing. But it's so easy to have your head turned simply by the technical proficiency of Goodfellas. And that's a reason enough to appreciate it and like it in itself. But because everything, the lighting, the costumes, the music, the attention to detail, and the evocation and replication of the time periods.
The period evocation is unbelievable.
If you ever hear from people who grew up in Italian neighborhoods in New York City and Long Island and New Jersey and stuff, like, yep, that's spot on. When they go to the barbecues, like, that's what they would do. That's what they'd wear. It's not some pastiche. It's like, it's really, really acutely observed. And then other technical feats, perhaps the one that really needs to be talked about is the very, very famous Steadicam tracking shot as Henry takes Karen into the Copacabana.
Still possibly the best.
And again, the technical feat, right? The preparation for that scene. Because it's not, we talked about Rope earlier, that while that scene was good, people in theatre do that sort of thing every night. But the preparation to get that scene with the movement, everybody making their cue exactly. There's huge
everybody hitting a restaurant full of people hitting their mark.
Yeah. All the sound cues working perfectly. Everybody in exactly the right place, saying exactly the right thing. It's incredible. It's an incredible technical feat. It's superb. But it's not the point. The point is the effect.
Yeah.
And I think people can get hung up on that rather than what it's for, because, you know, Karen and the viewer are just buffeted and dizzied by Henry's world. You know, you see the glamour and then the special treatment, and he goes through the club, this world where people know him and respect him. And this is the first time that Karen's seeing what Henry is, even though she doesn't know yet. You know, a table's almost conjured up from thin air. People send him drinks. It's the glamour. But to get there, they travel to the underbelly of the restaurant, all the backroom business, all the gritty, dirty stuff. And it's just this perfect visual metaphor for the gangster life.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand that, I mean, those technical feats aren't ends in themselves. I mean, because if it was a lesser director in a lesser film, then somebody like Scorsese, who in Goodfellas was absolutely at the top of his game, this is like one of the greatest American filmmakers of the 20th century, in his masterpiece work. And so in those lesser hands, it would be doing it for the sake of this technical proficiency. But Scorsese isn't saying, look, I can do this. Scorsese is saying, look, see if I do this, it makes that better.
And I know there are people, we say him operating at its peak. I know people who argue that Raging Bull is his best film, and even some people who say King of Comedy, and I don't buy it. I've never felt anything other than Goodfellas, because it has an accessibility.
And those are good films, but
undeniably, and it's as much of a shock that Raging Bull didn't win the Oscar for best film that year as it was when Goodfellas didn't. But for me, I think, all right, maybe from a technical aspect, there are arguments to be made for Raging Bull, and I understand when people are coming from that end. But in terms of accessibility and engagement with the audience, Goodfellas is just it's like
it's in a league of its own.
It's like a beautiful Italian meal with a glass of wine. It's so engaging and so involving and so intoxicating. It's it just does wonderful things despite the nature of some of the subject matter.
I think while we're talking about technical stuff, but again, in service of what makes such a captivating, engrossing film, you've got to talk about Thelma Schoonmaker. It's an editing masterclass, and everything just from, you've got long takes early on while we're introduced to the characters and introduced to the life. You've got those incredible scene transitions with the freeze frames and the displaced audio.
Yeah.
And then eventually, you know, the frenetic edits that mimic the paranoia of this cocaine addict's mind as his world falls apart. And every single edit is perfect. Because basically everything in Goodfellas is pretty much perfect. It's hard to understand how you could improve on any of it, because look at the acting, right? You've got Robert De Niro at the top of his game, Joe Pesci at the top of his game, this basic unknown Ray Liotta just being this incredible central character.
He's never been as good since.
No. Then Lorraine Bracco as Karen. I mean, it's easy to forget too, as on the side, that this is a film as much about the mafia women as it's about the men. And this bubble they live in, so they get to believe that all this is normal.
And do you know what the most impressive thing about her performance is? Actually, it would have been very easy for her to have chewed the scenery bit and gone overboard.
Yeah.
The restraint she shows in her performance during, because there are scenes where there are histrionics, And actually, in some respects, her performance is probably possibly more impressive than Ray Liotta's, actually. Possibly. Because of the restraint she shows, actually, and well, if you haven't watched it already, there's probably something wrong with you, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and then, like, again, and he has done it in other films. Joe Pesci in this, he could chew the scenery, but it's not. There's just enough restraint, because that's what makes him more dangerous too, because you never know when he's going to...
Yeah, he's never a caricature.
You never feel comfortable with that character.
It would have been easy to overplay that character and actually have it become almost, all right, he's dangerous, but actually it's quite funny.
Like every parody of that scene that there's
isn't it funny when he blows up? Yeah, I don't know anybody who does an impression of that scene and has a performance in that scene, myself included, in a comic way. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's never a joke. The "am I a clown" scene sort of thing. It's always a thing of, yeah, what, damn, how terrifying. Yeah. What an impressive piece of work that is.
So basically, whenever Joe Pesci's on screen, there's always this tension because he doesn't take it too far. He doesn't become a cartoonish character. I mean, so everybody's like that. Even like the minor characters, again, they're very memorable characters and just played so well. Everything just seems spot on. Do people like Maury or Stax, Samuel L. Jackson's character, even Jimmy Two Times.
I'm going to get the papers.
So, I mean, everybody's just inhabited by people at the top of their game, directed by somebody at the top of the game, edited by somebody at the top of their game. And it's what all this just comes together to make this most compelling portrait of this horrible, horrible life, but that it's still enticing in some ways.
You still feel like you want to be part of it.
Yeah, and again, I mentioned it before, but it just doesn't moralise either. Here's the life. Make of that what you will. And you're like, well, these people are horrible. Clearly they're horrible. I'm not a monster, but some of it looks fun.
I'm glad I'm watching this through a window.
And he doesn't even have the characters moralise or even so much regret. There's guilt there in the characters, but you're never quite sure what the guilt was for, because I do feel, I reckon it's open to interpretation, but I do feel that when Henry's saying all of my life I always wanted, as far back as I remember, I wanted to be a gangster, that there's regret there. That's like, yeah, I made a terrible mistake, but sometimes, like, especially when he's talking at the end about how he gets to live the rest of his life as a schnook, that his regret there, and possibly a reason for guilt, is that not that he joined that life, but that he doesn't get to live it anymore. That's his regret, but that's open to interpretation. Scorsese's not saying, no, this is what I think you should think about this. He's saying, oh, what do you think the character thinks? And leaves that open to you, which is refreshing when so many things just preach to you.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Yeah. Yes. I do find it's one of the films that I find harder to watch the older I get. I think it's probably because I'm so used to the ending of it that the charm, the kind of enticement into that life is working on me less and less the older I get, because I know the consequences of all these actions now. So it's, when you take away some of the impact at the start of the film, it makes the end of the film a bit less impactful, but it's still clearly a masterwork.
It's one of those films that people argue about being the best mafia film ever, and I don't think you could ever come to that, because the obvious comparison is The Godfather, but then again, you can't compare them because they're completely different films. They're about different things, and they're at different levels of the mafia, apart from anything else, but it's an argument you could have. It's like, which of these two amazing films is the most amazing film?
And to some degree as well, I was in Donnie Brasco as well.
I really like Donnie Brasco.
As in very much the same sort of league. In fact, I'm more of a fan of it than I am of The Godfather.
But I think whereas The Godfather was its own thing and Goodfellas is very much its own thing, Donnie Brasco was a lot to Goodfellas, so it's why I would perhaps not consider it in the same stratosphere as either of those two, but it's a very good film too, but as so many films do, it was a lot to Goodfellas.
If you haven't already, read Nick Pileggi's book
Wise
Guy, which along with actually Casino, which Casino was based on, are absolutely fascinating. And on a part, it's not a case of the film being better than the book again, but there is so much more in the book as well that fleshes. If you want to understand even more about that world,
Scorsese and Pileggi managed to get an awful lot of his book into Goodfellas, but it's a film. There's a limit to what you can put in. But,
absolutely,
it's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely on a par with each other. And if you are hungry for more, probably better to do that than join the mafia. Yeah. It's like the mafia have given you this. This whole film is like the mafia have given you this opportunity. It's as if for a day they've pulled back the stage curtains and they've gone, okay, here it is. And then at the end of the film, are you sure you want a piece of this? Probably not. Back to your day-to-day life. Yeah. Awesome.
So there we go. That's a quick rundown of some of our favourite films. There's many, many more that we could have put on here that we haven't. I'm sure it's probably got your own surprises. If you do have something that you particularly want to take issue with us, why not contact us? We'll be on Twitter at FudsOnFilm. You can give us our email address, podcast@fudsonfilm.com. Reach out to us, comment on the website, do anything you like. Leave a review on iTunes, why not? But until next time, well, we'll be back soon. We're going to have probably going to be starting off with a rundown of Clint Eastwood's career.
Yes, and his progression from actor to director.
Based on a morbid concept and a dream that I had recently.
So I hope you look forward to that. It should be with you fairly soon, but until then, I have been Scott Morris, and join me again, Craig Eastman.
Fare thee well.
And Drew Tavendale.
Goodbye.
Catch yous on the flip side.